This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. As I was just kind of starting to think about editing this, putting it together, I remembered that I've forgotten two VHT D50 dumbbell clones from this list. And so I'm thinking that my estimate for this video may be a little off. Anyway, if you're looking for backing tracks, and kind of the lick lessons that I do, Patreon, you can get access to everything on there. I created a tier a while ago for just £2 a month, where you get literally everything. There's like over 600 backing tracks on there, I think, or over 400. Anyway, a lot of backing tracks like the one you just heard. So hopefully it's fairly good, respectable value there. I do try to keep it like cheap. There are higher tiers if you want to support more, but I wanted to make it so that like at the ground level, £2 a month, you can get access to everything. So hopefully that, on with the video. My good buddy David Beebe today, and he kind of asked, have you like ever thought about how many amps you've owned? You know, it must have been quite a few. And obviously for this channel, I thought as I was starting off that it was important to have loads and loads and loads of gear to kind of talk about. And amps was one of these things that I started getting into, and basically the buying of amps peaked during lockdown, I think. So it's definitely a sign for me that it was not based on much rational thinking. Another sign for me is, of course, that most of these amps I would have played a couple of times, but not much, not enough to justify owning them, which is, you know, whatever. The one positive to this thing is that my main thing has been to buy amps second hand. So as much as I've spent on these amps, I have managed to sell most of them on for about what I paid. And so I think, unlike some other super unhealthy habits, this has at least not cost me in the long term. But, you know, so a bit of background on me. I did a video relatively recently talking about what my income would have been as a guitarist, how much I was earning, because this was kind of, most of this was purchased in the kind of leading up to lockdown, and then peaked at lockdown. So this was kind of based on my gig earnings, which I think peak earnings around then were sort of around 20,000 a year. And I guess part of why I bought some of these things because you can, it's an expense, right? So yeah, I guess it was part of my business at the time anyway. I've since kind of figured out that amps don't make me happy. The two amps that I bought, this one was £149, and also I bought a Two Rock Classic Reverb Signature for 3,600 off of Jake. But I now only have two amps here. A Fender Pro Reverb from 1965, which continues to cost me money because it kind of needs servicing. It's not the most reliable thing. and then the Matchless Lightning clone from Rift Amps, which actually brings me quite a lot of pleasure and is one of the cheapest amps that I ever bought, because I bought it from them for £150 for a hand-wired thing, because they made it for an April Fool's joke. So I don't know if you've ever done this kind of exercise yourself. I'm pretty shocked by how much money it's costed me. Although this is over a course of, around 30 years, so maybe £1,000 a year in terms of amp expenditure. I could have, because basically my gigging amp for most of this, when I was gigging an amp, was a Mesa Boogie Nomad 45, and that was one of the last amps that I actually sold. A lot of the other amps I never really gigged much. They were just bought for the fun of it. So this list could realistically have been about £1,000, and I guess there's an argument for spending a lot of money once rather than going through all of this thing. I don't know if your story's anything like similar. The very first amp that I ever had was a Park practice amp, Park by Marshall, tiny little 20-watt thing a bit as well. I bought a Crate GX65. Then I upgraded to a Marshall AVT 150, a proper amp that I ever bought, with this Mesa Boogie Nomad 45 that I still have behind me. I paid £750 for this from Manson's, which at some point I bought a Vox AC30. I can't remember if it had the blue speakers or not. I think it might have. I think I would have probably been looking for an Alnico blue version. It would have been one of the Chinese bunch. I bought the Mesa Boogie Electrodyne, which you might have seen on this channel. I bought that from eBay, and then later found out it was the amp that Tony Mackenzie had reviewed and stuff. I had two Blue Angels. I don't have them anymore. I've had two Mark IIIs. I've had a California Tweed. I've had a Mesa Boogie Fillmore. I've had a Mesa Boogie Mark 525 twice. Mesa Boogie Lone Star I've had 3 times. And I think Mesa Boogie Mark 1 reissue and a Mesa Boogie Road King. I've had things like, there was this Ibanez Tube Screamer amp. I had an Ibanez Whole Tone, which was like the Ibanez version of the Polytone. A Line 6 Spider V, a Marshall Origin 20, a Marshall Blues Breaker, so the JTM 45 kind of combo. An Orange Rockaverb. I bought a Vox AC 15. I bought that to just kind of, I don't know, see if there was something I was missing. A Cornford Carrera, which could kind of do those Marshall tones, sensible-ish volumes. I've owned a Fender Princeton for a tiny bit. I thought that was really cool sounding. I had a Fender Champ, the oldest amp that I've ever owned. Second oldest. A Boss Katana. Don't need to say too much about that. A Line 6 Catalyst. I think that started with a Fuchs 4 Aces. I've also had a Fuchs Blackjack 21 for a tiny bit. Carrier-tone ODS 50, which Dumble thing, also the Two Rock Jet 35. I tried that for a tiny bit, gigged it once. It's the Fender Pro Reverb. This one was £149, and also I bought a Two Rock Classic Reverb Signature for £3,600 off of Jake. But yeah, I don't know, it was an interesting thing for me. I was kind of feeling a little bit sick as I was tallying up that amount of money. So it's like £30,000, which is not an insignificant amount of money, of course. And especially, as I say, in the state that I was in, the amount of money that I was earning, it was a lot of money to spend on things that I didn't need at all. I guess over the course of 30 years, though, again, you think about if you were going away on holidays, if you had a smoking habit, if you had a drinking habit, or, gambled away your family's money. I guess there are other ways that this money would have been worse spent, but for me, it's a little bit crazy. So yeah, I don't know if you want to do this exercise. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. For me, I buy amps generally on eBay. Reverb, I might have bought a few. I don't tend to buy many new. Do I have any amps that I'm gassing for right now? The answer is basically no. If I didn't have this Pro Reverb, I think I would go for a Cerbella head, and that would basically be about the only thing that I feel like I would need, and even that I don't need. So it's probably not something that I'm going to buy, but that is the one thing that I'm kind of considering. I've just remembered there's some Carol Ann amps that didn't go on this list, so it's more. So there was a Carolan triptych for 770, and also a Carolan Tucana lead, which isn't on this list. That needs to go on. It's more than I thought. So yeah, careful with your money out there, folks, because these amps, they will get you. Let me know if you've got a big amp collection or a small amp collection. Which do you prefer? For me, I realised that space is actually a thing that I don't have loads of, and especially now that I've got a kid, it's one of those things where actually having loads of these boxes, which I mostly don't use, is not great. So that's why for me, I think I had to kind of think, right, I need to get rid of a lot of this stuff that I've just accrued for some unknown reason. I'm glad I got control of it. But that total number is there now with those 2 Carolan amps added. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you have them. As I say, this particularly, a lot of these purchases were made before I even started to earn a bit of money from the channel. So it's a thing that actually, as my earnings increase, my purchases have kind of plummeted, which is weird.